Hello everyone, it's Mai Larsen here with Crafting on a Budget and Baby Emma. So today we're going to be creating a snippet roll, and this was inspired by Marley, one of Tim Holtz's makers. And the other day he was doing one of his live streams and Marley showed a lot of her Halloween stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, okay. So I was inspired by her snippet roll, and I kept thinking, what am I going to use to make a snippet roll? So I went around looking in my craft room, found some of these spools from ribbons that I had, and so I saved them. So you can use these ribbon spools, but I went to the Goodwill, and of course I stumbled across these wooden spools. Now it came in a little set like this, and it was like a light wood color. So I took some, that's my little staining cloth, dark walnut, and I stained it. So I got like 4 little spools, and so this is going to be my little project. Anyway, so this is my little snippet roll, and I used some Tim Holtz paper for the front and the back, some of his embellishments, and a little paper clip. And of course I got this sari ribbon from Amazon. I cut it to size so it's a little bit snugged in here, and for my little embellishment I use a bowl pin and some beads and a button, so it's really snugged in here. Now it's made out of a paper bag, watercolor paper, and some scraps of paper that I had in my craft room. So you can use whatever you want. I sandwiched my paper bag in between the watercolor paper and strips of paper that I had cut up and had here in my wastebasket. So that's what we did. We used some stamps and some distress inks and some ephemeras from Tim Holtz, and also some that I had from Printables, washi tape. I used a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a whole lot of nothing, basically. But I think it turned out really cool, and I love how it came out. So as you can see, it's pretty snug in here. I didn't want it to be wonky. I do like that it feels like leather because I backed it up pretty good, so it's not going to break. Of course, so for this you're going to use your glue. You're going to need glue. You're going to need 2 eyelets. I have an eyelet here, an eyelet at the end here. Washi tape, ephemeras. Now if you don't have any vintage ephemeras or Tim Holtz ephemeras, that's okay. Grab a magazine, cut up some pieces, use that. Grab a book, cut up some pieces, use that. Go into Pinterest. Sometimes you can find some digitals there, some vintage digitals that you can download. Go into Graphic Fairy. If you pay that $9.99 a month, tons of graphics that you can, digital graphics that you can use. You know, there's so many options out there. You don't have to necessarily go out and buy these ephemeras, but if you do have the Tim Holtz ephemeras, great. If you don't, go around your craft room, cut up pieces of paper, stamp on them, create your own ephemeras, okay? Some of these are just ephemeras that I printed from digital graphics that I purchased. Like this is a digital graphic. This here, story, I went into my Word. Let's see if you can see, it's kind of, let's see, explore, those little words. It's a little blurry. I'm not sure why I don't have auto focus on, but anyway, you can see, maybe it's my glasses. Explore, see? Remember. I just went into Microsoft Word, typed up some words, some random words, and print them out on just regular printer paper and just cut them out. That's all I did. These little images, I had some from a digital graphic set that I purchased, and I sized them up really small, and again cut them up and attached it to this. Stamps from Tim Holtz, washi paper. I used some heat resistant tape. That's what I use on some of this. I used buttons, I sewed, I splattered. I did a little bit of this and a whole lot of nothing, like I said. So if you're ready, let's gather our supplies. Like I said, we're going to use some distress ink to your choice. I'm probably going to be doing one like a Halloween theme, but gather your supplies. Some gesso, black paint if you want to do some splatters. Distress inks, I'm going to use Speckle since I do want to do something Halloweenish, the Shabby Shutters, Oxide, Force Moss, Oxide. I'm probably going to be using the Rusty Hinge Oxide, and Vintage Photos Oxide. And I also will be using Archival Ink Coffee and my Archival Ink and Black to stamp. Gesso, black paint to splatter, and a paintbrush. A spray bottle with some water. I like to use my stamp blocks, and I'll show you why. Some glue, ephemeras. Like I said, I'm going to be doing something kind of Halloweenish, but you do you, and I'm going to do what I like, which is a Halloween theme one. So I will see you back in the next slide here in a couple minutes. So gather your supplies, and you're going to need some scrap paper. As I mentioned, I used a paper bag to sandwich it up. It was just something that we got from the grocery store, and I cut it up into strips. And I also used some papers that I had cut up from a ream of paper I got from the Austin Creative Reuse shop. That's where I got it. So gather your supplies, and let's come back here in a few seconds. Okay, so I forgot to mention, you'll need some baby wipes just to kind of clean up your surface. If you don't have a glass mat, you can use, I like to use parchment paper from Dollar Tree, and I stamp on that, and I do all my inking on that, because I can then cut this up and use that later on for some, clusters or ephemera pieces. I kind of like the look it gives, so go ahead and grab that or your mat. And if you don't have a glass mat that you can, because in one of the techniques that I'm going to use, I will use the glass mat to kind of, get an effect there. But mostly I'll be using my stamp block. So that plus your paper cutter, your heat gun, and I think I mentioned it all. And if you have a sewing machine, you can add that extra touch with that. So let's get started. And I also wanted to mention, this is the paper pack that I got from the Austin Creative Reuse. It's a typewriter paper, and that's what I use. But hey, use what you have, because that's something that I got from the thrift store. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use these colors as I mentioned before. I'm going to also use my little brush here, and I think I'm going to start with my tea dye. I'm going to grab one of these papers, and I often have something to blot, like these little scraps of coffee dye paper, and I blot on them because then I can use them for something else later on. So grab your block. I'm going to use my small block and kind of get that in there good. My spray bottle with water, and I'm just going to slide it down. There you go. That's one. Grab your other sheet. Set that one aside. Spray. And just keep doing that. You can. Another thing you can do is if you think you have too much, grab another sheet and blot it. Press down on it. It's like if you had a gel press, and if you don't have a gel press, this is a wonderful way of having a gel press without having a gel press, if you know what I mean. So, you know, you know. All right. Press down, blot, and it lifts up some of that color. So, lift that one there, and let's go ahead and again. Let's go ahead and work with this one, since we already have a little bit, and you can just, you know, I like the slide technique. Grab another one, and I just do this randomly. Like on a rainy day, you can just sit down and do this and get a couple pieces done, and then for your next project, all you have to do is just pull out those sheets, you know. Again, there's no right or wrong on this. I do like the slide, like blot and slide. And just keep doing it until you're tired, right? There you go. All right. Okay, so there's that. Next, I'm going to grab my shabby shutters. Let me clean my block here. I'll leave it like that. Just go into certain areas. Blot that a little bit. Doesn't have to be completely white. I mean completely covered, because we want some white to be exposed. Just keep that in mind. You do want some white to be out there. Give it that contrast color. You can see it's just kind of like a little assembly line. Stamp, wet, blot, slide. Stamp, wet, blot, glide. We're going to do that with all the colors. I'm going to get layers. That's the key, is layers, okay? All right, I'm going to clean up my block again. And I am now going to grab my rusty hinge. Down. Okay, so I'm going to take my rusty hinge again, get it good in there, blot with water or spray with water, grab my paper. Maybe it's too much, but that's all right. Grab your other sheet and blot it. Pick up some of that. See that? There's never any right or wrong. Remember that. Just keep that in mind. There is no right or wrong in this, okay? You don't have to worry about whether or not you did it wrong. Just do it. That's the most important thing, is that you do it, and do it freely. You're like, I love the slide. It's like, I love that. Hallelujah. Okay, so last blot, not too much. Rusty hinge kind of goes a long way. Okay, there you go. I'll just slide it down. Slide it down. All right. Clean that up. Now we're going to go with forest moss. Let me go ahead and dry these and we'll be back. Okay, so we've dried them up. Now I'm going to go in. We've done the shabby shutters, the rusty hinge. Now we're going to grab the forest moss. And again, we're going to take our little block here. And because I want something more Halloween themed, spray it, blot it, move my paper aside. Okay, so I have this Tim Holtz splatter stencil, and what we're going to do is we're going to give the effects of some splatters here, even though there is some splatters here, but we're going to go ahead and do that. I think I'm going to use the coffee instead of the Vintage Photos Oxide. So I'm going to go ahead and grab some of this with my brush and just give it a swirl here. Okay, so I went ahead and did my splatters with the stencil, and I also distressed a little bit around the edges. Now what I'm going to do next is grab my water spray and spray here and there just to get that effect. Let it sit for a couple minutes because it is oxide, so it'll pick up, and then just kind of dry it up. And it'll give you some splatter where it's kind of like removed. It's a nice thing about the oxide, and I'll show you here in a minute down here where you can really see it. That effect. See it there? It's as if, you know when you take bleach and it falls onto something, it kind of removes the color. Well, that's what kind of the water with the oxide does. It removes some of that color in certain areas. So I like that. I like that a lot. Pretty cool. Okay, so we're going to do that with all of these. Just splatter here and there. Oh, look, I didn't edge this one, so I guess we'll have to edge that together. I'll grab my little brush. How could I have forgotten one? I think it's because it was meant for me to show you. Alright, I'll just go around the edges, really profoundly around those edges. How could I have done that? Woe's me. Okay. There's this stamp that I got from Temu. And it has several little stamps here that I want to use because they're great for background. I'm going to go ahead and get my block here. And my archival ink, which I do need to get a new one. For some reason, this one here didn't have enough juice, and it's not that old. I just got it, what, a couple months ago. But it's not. Oh, and I wanted to show you, look at that, some of the splatters as you, after you've inked it up, and then you go in with your water, it kind of uplifts some of those, the color. Okay, so let's go in here, and again, doesn't have to be perfect. So I mean, it's my colors are not, I'm going to remove it out of the color is not, it's kind of losing its juice. I'm going to have to refill it. I don't make them like they used to, that's for sure. Let's get some of these. Doesn't have to be precise. It's just layers. Make it like a little assembly line and just stamp, stamp, stamp. Grab one and stamp. Grab another one and stamp. Keep doing that until, and notice I have this little parchment paper in the back. Eventually you can use that and cut it up for your projects as well, little clusters. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. That's my advice to you. There is a time that I was very scared of doing this kind of stuff because it could seem intimidating, you know, but it really isn't, because it doesn't have to be perfect. It does not have to be perfect. Because there's so many layers involved that before you know it, if you did make a mistake, you can just grab another stamp and cover it up, or grab some gesso and go over it a little bit, you know? There's no right or wrong. Okay, so next, let's wipe this up. A little wet rag here. I like circles. Let's do circles. I like circles. I'll use my smaller block for that one. I went gathering up some stamps. This is a Tim Holtz Halloween one from last year. This is a Heidi swap that I got last year, and this is the one with condemned. So we're probably using some of these. Definitely the word condemned has to go on here. That's important. Alright, so for this process we're going to be using the gesso, and as you can see I have grunged up, stamped all my pages. They don't have to be perfect. As long as you're happy and content with it, it is totally okay. So those are all my pages. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this gesso and with a little card here, I'm just going to randomly make little lines here and there. Just to give it more texture here and there. Okay. So this part's very simple. Dollar Tree rub-ons, and I love these. Portable if you have a Dollar Tree. If not, if you have some numbers, stamps, just go for it, okay? Numbers are done. Now for some splatter. Now this is some Dollar Tree paint, but you know what? Actually you can go to Walmart and get the apple barrel for 49 cents. This was a little bit, but it is an expensive paint, but apple barrel is just as cheap. So let's go ahead and water down. Oops. Man down, man down. Okay. Water down. Black paint. This is just a little brush, a cheap brush. And we're going to create some splatters. This does create a mess, but it gives it a nice little effect that I absolutely love to do. Okay, trimmed. Voila, we've trimmed it. This here, we're going to save it and use it for, you know, other projects that we might have in mind, because it is, I'm going to snip it here. It is just, you know, pattern that we made, snippets, right? So we'll use that for something else. And I just throw it in my little basket of stuff, okay? Alright, so now we're just going to find some of these backdrop papers and kind of go to the back. Let's see, that one's pretty ugly that we can use. That one's pretty ugly. Just use the ugly ones, you know? The pretty one for something else. Like that. We use that one. That's too pretty. We can use that in the album or another project. We can't let go of that one. So we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to glue these down, and hopefully we'll have enough. I probably have to pull out some more. Yep, I do. But that's all right. We'll pull them out. So I'm just going to go ahead and keep on gluing and keep on trucking, and yeah, that's what we're going to do. Hands are grungy, nails are ruined with the fabric tack, but that's all right because we have a beautiful background. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? That is gorgeous. And this is the back part of it, and this is the front. So one thing I did with my first one is that with this one, I went and I did the same way here. And I started to attach all the ephemeras, and that became a headache. You can cut it into the size of your roll. So if your little spool, sorry, not roll, your spool is 2 inches, then you can trim your strip 2 inches and that's it, right? Now mine is about 1 inch. You know, and so what happens is if I was to cut it into 1 inch, it makes it a lot harder for me. So I just did a bigger strip, a wider strip, longer, and then I started to attach the ephemeras. And then when it came time to cut my 1 inch strip, it became very difficult because now I had this big roll. I mean, it's big, right? It's like over 36 inches. So it became hard to trim 1 inch. So what I suggest before you start putting your ephemeras, cut it into the size of the width of your spool. That way you're not having any issues in your paper trimmer, and it's not that difficult. So do that before, and also for your sewing. So cut it the size of your spool before you put your ephemera and before you start stitching, because it was a headache trying to do this because it was really wide. It was about that wide, and I was having a little bit more difficult time maneuvering it into the sewing machine. I did it, but that was because I was determined to get it done, and I learned from that mistake. So that's my recommendation, or my suggestion, is trim. Do a big piece like this if you want, and then trim it. to the size, because that way you can use this, you know, right now I can cut this up, and that's what I did before, is I have all these strips ready to go and to mount on my spools, and all I have to do is go back in and add a few more ephemeras, and then it's ready to attach to my spools. Easy peasy, right? So that's what I'm going to do. And so this is going to be a part 2. On part 2, we will start putting the ephemeras. I will have this cut into my 1-inch strip, and we'll start layering the ephemeras and then attaching it to our spool. So thank you so much for staying this long with me in this tutorial. I hope you liked it. Leave a comment below. If you have any questions, leave it below. If you have any comments, whether it's negative or positive, whatever, just leave me a comment. Just drop me a comment below and tell me what part of this video you like the most. What did you get from it? I know there's a lot of people out there that's done it, and I forgot to mention the one lady that I did see that did a wood spool was, I think her name is Yuri. I'm not sure. I briefly saw her video tutorial. I can't remember because it's not someone, I just briefly saw it in one of the groups, and I'm like, that is so cool. I like her take because she did mention Marley. She had gotten the idea from Marley. So I went to see Marley because, of course, I had seen Tim Holtz when he was doing all that. So I went to see Marley, but she mentioned that she had also seen Marley. So she used a wood spool. I like the idea of the wood spool, and I came across one. So I'm going to trim this. Part 2, we'll be back. We'll put all the ephemeras in, and we'll start attaching. Again, like I said, leave me a comment below. Tell me what part of this process you enjoyed the most, or not. And I hope to see you in part 2. Till next time, guys. Bye.